most distress, wrote Bradford, there were only 6 or 7 individuals able to take care of those on shore who were ill. Among these were Mr. William Brewster, their reverend elder, and Miles Standish, their captain and military commander. In the absence of adequate housing on shore, some settlers and crew were still on the Mayflower, where the ill were presumably tended by some of the few surviving women, whose role Bradford, as well as other contemporary writers, consistently overlooks. On shore, Brewster and Standish labored day and night to fetch wood for the fires they burned to keep the patients warm. They made the beds of the sick, dressed them and changed and washed their soiled clothes. They performed, Bradford reported, all the homely and necessary offices for them which dainty and queasy stomachs cannot endure to hear named. Miles Standish's wife died. Many families were destroyed, including the entire Martin, Tinker, Ringdale, and Turner households. 13 of the 24 families that emigrated lost their heads of household. 14 of 18 women died, and half of the 20 children. 9 of 14 male servants died, and all of the few female servants. Those who survived endured the heartbreak of losing family and friends. While the ravages of disease posed the greatest threat to the colonists, there was much more to concern Brewster. In the weeks since the site of settlement had been chosen, the weather had frustrated the effort to build homes and storehouses. On December 23, 1620, men had disembarked from the Mayflower in order to begin the task of cutting down trees and carrying the timber to the chosen site. Frost and foul weather hindered them, and they were often much troubled with rain and wet. They were finding that the winter was sharper and longer than in the Old World. They were unprepared for the fact that in New England the onset of winter frosts, ice, and snow made everyday tasks extremely difficult. Many suffered frozen hands while working in the bitter weather. Scarcity of provisions was another concern. Delays in setting out from England and the length of the voyage had depleted their supplies. There was no place to replenish them and no expectation of a relief ship. As a later traveler to New England would put it, "Once parted with England, you shall meet neither with taverns, nor alehouse, nor butchers, nor grocers, nor apothecary shops to help what things you need. Here are neither markets nor fairs to buy what you want." They would have to find and eat quahogs, mussels, and shellfish, as well as ground nuts. Brewster and others would have known of the stories of starvation that had almost destroyed the Jamestown settlement, including those told by George Percy, who would recount how, when famine beginning to look ghastly and pale in every face, some were driven to dig up dead corpses out of graves and to eat them. One of their own number, Stephen Hopkins, had been on the Sea Venture, which shipwrecked on Bermuda in 1609 while on a voyage to Virginia. When he and the other survivors eventually reached Jamestown, he witnessed the devastating effects of the starving time in that colony. Hopkins's tales would have added to the fears of the Plymouth settlers. Since their first arrival and explorations of the Cape in November 1620, they had been aware of the presence of the natives and, in fact, had been attacked on the morning of December 7th at what they subsequently named First Encounter Beach. In the absence of any other contact, the colonists were frequently unsettled by the cries of Indians and smoke from distant campfires. They knew of clashes between Englishmen and natives during the history of the Roanoke settlement and attacks on English traders in the New England region, some of whom had earned the enmity of the local tribes by kidnapping a number of their young men. The fact that in their explorations of the Cape they had uncovered native burial sites and stolen buried corn may have made them fearful of some sort of retaliation. In addition, they were troubled by the howls of wolves and other wild animals that they might encounter if they strayed too far from their settlement. There were more failed efforts at colonization than successes. Brewster had read of Humphrey Gilbert's failed colony in Newfoundland, the failure of Walter Raleigh's colony in Roanoke, and the questions that remained about its lost colonists, and negotiations with the Virginia Company would have made it clear that Jamestown's future was still in doubt. Just recently, Brewster had learned the fate of Francis Blackwell, once an elder of the main separatist congregation in Amsterdam, who